My name is Yvonne Gittelson. I am running for Hampshire County Sheriff. I am a lifetime educator, and I'm the education candidate among the three of us because I know that education reduces recidivism and it saves lives and money. I want to run for the position for a number of different reasons. I think we need a very different vision for the sheriff's positions. I think we need to think outside the typical carceral box, right? This isn't just about custody. This isn't just about warehousing. We need to think about education. We need to think about programming. We need to think about mental health first and foremost, certainly substance abuse, because we know that that's a contributing factor in the majority of the folks who come into our custody. I also want to run for this position. I am running for this position because I worked at the Hampshire County Jail and I know we can do a whole lot better. My current position is that of Corrections Program Specialist for the state, and I oversee the county houses and the state prisons and the DYS facilities for juvenile offenders, and I've seen what's possible in the other facilities. I know that we can do a whole lot better in Hampshire County, and we must do better in Hampshire County. The sheriff, in addition to running, I'd say that running the correctional facility is probably about 80% of the job. It could be a little bit adjusted depending on the priorities of the person in question. So it's running the jail, which also includes two sides. It includes the pretrial side for detainees who are awaiting trial. They have not yet been sentenced. Then there's the House of Corrections side, which is for those who have been sentenced. There's also something called the RLU, the Regional Lockup Unit, and that's where local police departments deposit folks that they've arrested while they await arraignment, appearance in front of a judge. But in addition to running the facility, and that's what takes place on the main campus of the Hampshire County Jail, in addition to running that facility is also the Office of Civil Process. That's where if someone needs papers served, so for something like non-payment of child support or eviction notices, they would go to the Office of Civil Process and the paperwork would be processed. The sheriff also oversees the Office of Community Corrections, and that has an increasingly important role as we think about criminal justice reform. We know that more and more people are going to be sentenced to a type of custody, a type of supervised custody out in the community. So the Office of Community Corrections is going to need to expand and take a much larger role. I want to see a much better and more flexible articulation between the main facility and those who are then in community corrections. Community corrections also involves coordination with the Office of Probation and Parole, offices of Probation and Parole, and the sheriff can also provide much more support to any of the communities in the county. But primarily, the role of sheriff in Massachusetts is a governmental and administrative one. It is not like Texas. It's not like Georgia. The sheriffs in Massachusetts don't strap on a holster and one of those Mountie hats and go around arresting people. That's not what sheriffs in Massachusetts do. It's mostly a custodial and administrative and governmental position. So the first thing I want to share is that it's not possible to remain at the facility that you are running for sheriff for if the current sheriff is running for re-election. So both the other challenger and myself had to leave our previous positions at the Hampshire County Jail in order to run for this position. So I want people to know that because I think it's an important factor in this race. Understanding how much had to go into preparing to run for this position. We each had to play the long game and really think about the steps involved in getting ready to run for the position and declare our candidacy. So a year ago, I left the Hampshire County Jail, and now I work at the Department of Education, and I'm the Corrections Program Specialist for the state. And in that role, I oversee the county houses, the state prisons, the DYS, Department of Youth Services facilities that receive education funding. And I work directly with sheriffs, I work with superintendents, I work with program directors and coordinators, I work with advisors, I work with teachers, and that involves about between a dozen and 24 different program sites, about 85 different personnel in those staff positions, and about 1,000 people in custody come under my supervision. And that's what I do now. Facing the county, I think the biggest issues, as I think about putting that together with the role of sheriff, I think the biggest issue really is making sure that the facility itself is safe and well run, and that we do what we need to do for the people in our care and custody. And right now, that's a big challenge because the facility itself is short-staffed, specifically on the security side. I can also say that staffing for medical among the nurses, that's also a challenge right now. But specifically with regard to security, it is a challenge to keep the correctional officers fully staffed. Right now they are running short-staffed on virtually every shift every single day. What that means is the people in custody are not fully getting the services that they need to be provided with, so that we enable them to become safer and rehabilitated individuals and that they don't come back. National statistics right now are that about 2 out of every 3 people currently in custody are going to come back. That's the recidivism rate. If we do a better job with education, mental health programming, and treatment services for substance abuse, staying sober. And by the way, alcohol is still the #1 substance that is abused by folks who come under our care and custody. If we don't make them safer, then they are not going to be fully rehabilitated, which means the likelihood of them going back out into our county and reoffending is much higher. So that's the #1 issue that I think faces the county, doing a better job in the facility for the people in our care and custody so that they don't then reoffend back out in the county. I think the county's biggest weakness right now, honestly, I'd probably throw in with the ACLU, who's recently launched a campaign this spring called Know Your Sheriff. And what they identified is that people in Massachusetts don't know who their sheriff is. They don't know what the sheriff's office does or can do. They don't know what the sheriff's office is responsible for. And what they identified, and very correctly so, is that sheriffs are the #1 persons who are responsible for providing access to all the treatments inside. And by treatment, that's a broad term. I include education programming, mental health services, and substance use services. So what the average person does not understand, and in Hampshire County, by the way, only 13% of the people who were surveyed could identify who the sheriff was. And even fewer could identify what the sheriff's job was and what the role was. So the fact that people don't know what's going on in the office, what's going on in the facility, I think that's the number one weakness that we need to address. And in my campaign, I identified transparency as my number one issue. I want to pull back the curtain of what goes on in the Hampshire Sheriff's Office and share with the community what the Sheriff's Office can do for them. So I would say it's lack of awareness of what the role of sheriff can be. That is a very tough choice because they are all pressing. So let me go through each one. Firstly, even though the Hampshire County Jail is a male-only facility, people might be wondering, what does the overturning of Roe v. Wade have to do with a male-only facility? And my answer is a lot. Pregnancy is one of the highest risk factors for any woman who is in an unstable relationship. An unwanted pregnancy puts her at very great risk of domestic violence. So this is an issue that is near and dear to my heart. I care very much about this. I am so relieved that Massachusetts is a pro-choice state and will protect a woman's right to choose. But keep in mind, we get folks from all over. We do get folks from other states, and we do get folks from other states where the right to choose may not be as protected as it is in Massachusetts. So the overturning of Roe v. Wade is of great concern to me. Any issues having to do with gun violence are also of great concern in Hampshire County because the vast majority of folks in custody right now are there for very serious and violent offenses, most of which involve gun charges. So I care an awful lot about gun control and gun safety, and I want to see gun laws strengthened appropriately. I think we need to strengthen mental health evaluations and background checks for those who are seeking to have gun licenses. And I think we need to very carefully navigate that road between Second Amendment rights, which I believe in very strongly, but also what kinds of guns certain individuals should have access to. The third one that I think I should touch on is the immigration policy. And I will say that my position as a locally elected county sheriff, that immigration is a federal matter. And as a locally elected county sheriff, I don't see it as my role to enforce federal immigration laws. Northampton, which is the city that the Hampshire County Jail is located in, is a sanctuary city. And I take that very seriously. I will not cooperate with authorities who may seek to get information from me solely on a person's immigration status. I don't think being undocumented is a crime that is worthy of my attention as a local county sheriff. I care about felonies. I care about violent charges. I care about those who have broken the law for serious offenses that we need to follow up on through the state system, but immigration is not high on my list of priorities. There may be people who commit crimes that are felonies who are also undocumented, in which that's a correlated offense, but if they are only undocumented, that's not a concern of mine. Correctional officers have really hard jobs. And the main thing that I would want voters in Hampshire County to know is we don't support them nearly enough. And when I am sheriff, it will be a priority for me to do some rehabilitation of staff morale, because right now staff morale at the Hampshire County Jail is very, very low. People don't want to work there. And people who have left the Hampshire County Jail have taken positions at other facilities. They're not leaving corrections, they're leaving the Hampshire County Jail. So we need to do some work on staff morale, team building, and among the things that I want to bring to the attention of Hampshire County voters is exactly what it's like to be a correctional officer. So let me share with you some of the things that can happen. They can be assaulted by people in custody. They can have urine thrown in their face as they open a cell door. It can be worse than that even. They can be intimidated. Some of our officers are younger than some of the folks in custody, and that can be scary. If you're talking about someone who is 21 or 23 and they're dealing with a 38-year-old hardened criminal who's been in jail or state prison multiple times, the idea of attacking an officer in uniform is a way for them to gain reputation. And I care very much about keeping my officers safe. So that's job one, because if they don't feel safe, they're going to be in a position of making decisions that might be then unsafe or cause an unsafe situation. So that's the main thing I would want voters in Hampshire County to know. I want to focus on de-escalation tactics and training, conflict resolution, mediation, different approaches. We need to think differently about corrections, because if we make it one of those us versus them kinds of situations, then we're always going to be in a position where we're having to use force to try to maintain control. And I don't think that that's what we have to do. I think there are different ways to maintain care and custody without it being one of a very forceful kind of situation. And certainly not, I don't ever want it to be or allow it to be anything that resembles a bullying kind of situation, because that has no role in corrections. Oh, I have so many good ideas about that. So first and foremost, I want to be present at all kinds of community events. So anytime there's a festival, anytime there is any kind of public event, I believe my office should have a table there, and that we should be doing outreach and education. Among the things that I want to do is I want to have a Narcan distribution program in Hampshire County, so that anyone who may have a loved one who is someone with a substance use disorder has Narcan at the ready, or really just anybody, because we don't know when someone could be in a position to overdose. So if we all have Narcan handy and we know how to use it, we can save lives. So that's one thing that I care about doing a lot. I want to do outreach to the schools. I'm an educator, so I care a lot about the school to prison pipeline, or as now it's often being referred to, the trauma to prison pipeline. And I want to interrupt that, because I know that we can. There are a lot of educators, a lot of teachers in our county who may not know that they have a child in their classroom or a teenager in their classroom who is the child of a person in custody. And I think that level of awareness needs to be brought to greater attention, because with so many people in custody and in various stages of being in custody, either on probation or on parole, we need to have a greater understanding of what it's like to be inside and then to be doing reentry on the outside. So I want to do those kinds of programs. First and foremost, I care a lot about education, and I think that my job is not just to educate those in my care and custody in the facility or my staff, but I want to educate the community. And part of what has been a real pleasure for me in this campaign has been to do voter education as well, because I think that's also my job as sheriff. So those are among the things that I would want to bring to people's awareness, the kind of, I want to reduce the stigma around mental illness, because I think way more people are walking around with something that is invisible that we have no idea they may be struggling with. And I think if we reduce the stigma, I care a lot about the mental health of the people who work in the facility, and nobody's talking about that. They deal with a lot of anxiety. Correctional officers in particular, I think they take on a certain hypervigilance in their role, because in their training, they're taught to constantly scan the room, look for what's different, look for what's out of place. And that hypervigilance, that's part of your job every day, that's not something that you turn off. And by the way, it's not just the correctional officers who have to be vigilant, it's everyone. It's every teacher, it's every case manager, it's every mental health worker, it's every substance abuse worker, substance use disorder worker, that we all have to keep an eye on what's missing. Did somebody walk away with my pen? You never know if a pen can be turned into a weapon, because it can. So we all deal with that inside of a facility, and we need to have a much better esprit de corps and a much better team spirit, and we need to rehabilitate our staff morale so that people want to work at the Hampshire County Jail, they want to stay working at the Hampshire County Jail, and new people who are brought in don't leave after a month or two, and that's happening right now. So I care a lot about that. That they've taken the right first steps, and now we need to kick it up a notch. We, under my term as sheriff, I will change the methodology in which mental health services are currently provided. I want to see one-to-one actual counseling and therapy provided to those in custody. Right now, what they get groups. They get group treatment. And the problem with that is that people who have committed serious offenses, which is really the vast majority of everyone in the facility, people who have committed serious offenses, they're not going to be terribly forthcoming when they live with and share rooms with other people who have committed serious and violent offenses. I think they need one-to-one, private, actual therapy, whether it's CBT, DBT, regular talk therapy, I'm a big fan of. They need that kind of attention. I think we also need to do and provide regular wellness checks at a minimum of once a year for everyone on staff. Just an outside provider who checks in with each of us and says, how are you doing? And gives us the permission to check in with each other to say, are you okay? And something seems a little different. We deal with very hard situations all the time. And I think we all care a lot about our jobs, and we care deeply about the people in our care and custody. When we find out that one of them passes away on the outside, even after they left us, it hits us hard. It hits us very hard. When we see that someone isn't doing well, or that they are impacted so seriously by something that has happened to them. Sometimes one of the hardest things that we witness is when someone's parent dies while they're in custody. And for various reasons, they may not be able to attend the funeral. That's hard, and that affects all of us. So I care a lot about the wellness of my community, certainly those who I work with every day, but that has a ripple effect, and that goes out into the community. So I care about everyone. It's not that difficult to get the opinion of a person in custody. Just ask them. I will be a sheriff who walks through my facility every single day. I will be a sheriff who has an open door policy. I will be a sheriff who will have, I hope that I can create a sort of inmate advisory council. And by the way, I don't personally love the term inmate. In the corrections field, that's the term that we use, in our day-to-day operations for the most part. But I prefer the term a person in custody. I want to remind myself and my staff every single day that it's a person who's in custody, person first, and not that inmate kind of label that is easy to dismiss, I think. So I don't find it difficult to speak to people in custody at all. I never have. I've always had an open door policy with my folks. They were formerly my students when I was at the Hampshire County Jail, or the students whose program we facilitated. But it was never hard to get access to me. Getting their opinion on anything is not tough. They like to talk, and they like to share their opinion, and they like to feel, I think everyone, whether they're in custody or whether they're on staff, they want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to know that their opinions and their input is valuable, and I think it is. I think that they are among the first folks to tell us how we can do a better job. And I'm open to listening to that, because I think we can do a better job. And they are some of the best people to tell us how to do that. And they're not that easy on each other, by the way. They are tough critics and tough judges of each other. They will tell us where we need to step it up and whom we need to hold accountable. So I'm not afraid of hard conversations. I never have been. So I welcome those conversations, and I welcome being told the hard truths so that I can learn. Firstly, I want to say that because the Sheriff's Association is a boys' club, there are 14 counties in Massachusetts, 14 sheriffs, they're all men. There is only one sheriff who is not white. I think, first and foremost, having a woman sheriff is going to get a lot, I know for a fact, being a woman sheriff is going to get a lot of buzz, especially because the new governor, it seems very clear to me, is going to be a woman. And I think that's going to get a lot of attention in a way that Hampshire County has not gotten for a long time. Hampshire County's allocation from the legislature is only above Dukes and Nantucket. Dukes and Nantucket, between them, maybe have 24 people in custody in both of those counties. Hampshire County, their allocation is just above Dukes and Nantucket. The equivalent size facilities are Berkshire, Franklin, and Barnstable in terms of the number of people in custody. Yet the allocations of Franklin, Berkshire, and Barnstable, going up in order Franklin is next above us by about 3 to 4 million. And Berkshire is above us by about 4, maybe even 5 million. And Barnstable is above Hampshire County by about $15 million. That's a lot of money discrepancy. And I think the fact that Hampshire County has been unable to move the needle on the allocation, each of those counties, their allocations have crept up a little bit. Hampshire County's has not. The current sheriff has not been able to increase the allocation from the legislature. And in fact, a major bone of contention that I have is that while he simultaneously has complained about the low amount of money that Hampshire County gets from the state legislature, he has yet simultaneously returned education grant funding to the Department of Education. I don't understand how you can return free grant money on the one hand and yet complain about low funding on the other. So I do think that a woman advocating for more money for education and mental health treatment and substance use disorder treatment, I think it's going to get a lot of buzz. We have strong women legislators throughout Hampshire County, including Representative Lindsay Sabadosa, Senator Joe Comerford, Senator Mindy Dahm. We have a woman police chief in Northampton. We have a woman mayor in Northampton. We have a woman mayor in East Hampton. I think the idea of a woman sheriff in Hampshire County is an idea whose time has come. I imagine that Mr. Kaline would choose to retire at this point. He has been there for 44 years. I don't imagine, I've not heard any subsequent plans if he were to not win the office again. But I imagine he might be in a position to step away. First and foremost, I would care about it being a smooth transition. And a question I'd like to ask him in the remaining upcoming debate is whether or not he will work cooperatively with one of the other challengers should we be successful, and he is not. I would hope that it would be an open door policy and that he would in a civil manner and cordial manner, hand over the reins in such a way that there is no major disruption as the transition of office took place. As far as Ms. Cepeda goes, Ms. Cepeda has a lot of good ideas. I'd like to use them, quite frankly. I think that the two of us have discovered that we have much more in common than we do with the current incumbent. So I would like to figure out a way to use some of her ideas and some of her experience. She's a corrections nurse. She knows much more about the medical side than I do. I think that's something I could make use of. If I am not successful, I get to keep my job at the Department of Education. So either way, I'm good. If she would like to reach out to me, I would, if it's her, I would be happy to help her understand what she could do better on behalf of the Hampshire County's education programming specifically. Although because I work at the Department of Education and because I did work at the Hampshire County Jail, conflict of interest rules prevent me from having a direct role if it were to be her and not me in the sheriff's position. I will always continue to serve my county. I am proud of Hampshire County. I am fiercely loyal to Hampshire County. I love this county. That's why I want to bring the skills and qualifications that I've learned at the state level. I want to bring all of that back to my county. So here's the number one thing that I really want to work on, but I think I can really only work on it as sheriff. I have already created a partnership with the UMass Prison Education Initiative. And what that involves is wanting to bring a statewide virtual college access program to anyone in custody around the Commonwealth. And the way it would work is, I know that the UMass Prison Education Initiative folks have already secured permission from the provost of UMass to offer courses, college courses, free for those who are incarcerated, at the very least the first one. And the genius of this program is that because we would do it virtually, even someone with a short stay could begin their college course inside, and if they're released during the semester, they could finish that course on the outside because all they need is their laptop to keep going in their course. And then we would set them on a path of college education. We know that education reduces recidivism. It saves lives, it saves money. Every dollar we spend on the inside while someone is incarcerated saves $4 to $5 down the road in future reincarceration costs, because the likelihood of them returning to custody drops and drops and drops. So I really want to work as sheriff, and what I want to do is I want to give the UMass Prison Education Initiative, I want to give them a home base at the Hampshire County Jail. I want to set up an office for them through which they could coordinate this program statewide. We have floated this idea to the other facilities, and they're very, very interested. So I am very excited and very hopeful that I'm going to be able to bring this program to fruition. But if I am not elected as sheriff, I would be happy to offer my services to the UMass Prison Education Initiative in whatever way they might find helpful if they are able to launch this on their own, which will be more challenging if I'm not able to support them as the local sheriff. But because UMass is the flagship campus of the UMass Amherst is the flagship campus of the UMass system, I want the Hampshire County Jail to be the flagship correctional facility for correctional education. And I know for a fact we can do that. I think, I'm not sure that there isn't a whole lot that I haven't touched on yet, other than to say, I really do want to emphasize the idea of transparency, accountability, which there has not been in any sheriff's office, not just the Hampshire County Sheriff's Office, but in any sheriff's office. The sheriff's positions are notoriously protected and have been for decades. Nobody knows what goes on inside these facilities, and the only people that sheriffs are accountable to are the voters every 6 years. Now, if the voters don't know what's really going on inside these facilities, how can they hold their sheriffs accountable? The average citizen in Hampshire County or any county, they don't know what to ask. They don't know what goes on, so they don't know where to follow up. And among the questions that I've raised in this race are questions like, how are jobs simply given sometimes to people that the sheriff knows? I need to know more about that, because these are state jobs. When the counties were dissolved several years ago, all the county facilities were made state agencies. So I want to know how someone can be given a state job with good pay and very good benefits. How can they be given a job when that job has never been advertised, when that job has never been posted, when nobody inside the facility has ever been given an opportunity to apply for that job? So when I talk about accountability, that's the kind of accountability I will bring to this office. I think every job needs to be posted, maybe with one exception. I think I would allow any sheriff to have someone who is a chief of staff that they choose, right? That they bring in to protect the office and the facility in general. That a person that is, first and foremost loyal to that sheriff. That's maybe the one exception I would make. Every other position needs to be offered and posted first internally so that anybody inside knows that they have a shot at getting promoted and that they have a shot at every good job that's available, because a lot of these jobs are great jobs and they're really interesting jobs. And lastly, I want to really bring home the idea of community. When I was out collecting signatures, nobody knew who this sheriff was or what the sheriff's office can do. I want to bring the communities into the facility, and I want to bring the sheriff's office out to the community. And that's why I focused on those three principles of transparency, pulling back the curtain, letting everybody know what goes on in all the offices that the sheriff oversees, accountability, holding me accountable. I want a citizens advisory board where everybody comes and meets with me on a regular basis and asks me hard questions. I love answering those hard questions. And I want to do more for my communities, plural, of Hampshire County, especially some of the little ones that only have 1,000 people in their towns. They never get heard from. And typically the sheriff doesn't even go and campaign anywhere in those communities and has not historically. I am very proud that I collected signatures from all 20 counties, communities in Hampshire County, all 20. That was not an easy thing to do. And you have to go get those signatures and deal with the town clerks of each of the towns. It was a lot of extra work. I know now why previous sheriffs have only focused on the big cities. It's a whole lot easier to get your signatures if you just go to Northampton, Amherst, and East Hampton, but I didn't do that. I went to all 20. So, one more thing. So, in addition to the flagship program, which I consider the UMass Prison Education Initiative, I would really like to work on that. There are probably two other things that I think I'm really good at doing. I'm a 100% successful competitive grant writer. I am the only candidate among the three of us who has brought money into the jail instead of sending money back out of the jail. So that's something that I can do, and I have created and designed vocational training programs through grant funding. I want to expand that, and among them are one program that I really want to look into because I know it would be of great interest to people in custody, is a virtual CDL program where we get a virtual simulator for truck driving, and then we partner with a community truck driving company for practicum when someone is released or is at a level of custody that they could do training on the outside and get them ready for truck driving jobs. There's a national shortage of truck drivers. Entry-level wages for truck driving are about $70,000. That's family-sustaining wages. And these are good jobs that people in custody want to do. The last one is near and dear to my heart. I want to bring a dog program to the Hampshire County Jail. I want to bring shelter dogs in. I want to get them obedience trained so that they are more adoptable when they are in their fostering situation, which the jail would be providing. I know that focusing on a shelter dog is something that people in custody really relate to because they see themselves oftentimes as shelter dogs, someone that society has given up on. And when they can focus their attention and energy on an animal who needs them, they develop empathy, they develop compassion, and they give back to the community in a way that is bigger than themselves. So instead of focusing on their own incarceration, their own custody, and how miserable they are while they wait for their day of release, they have this creature who needs them, this dog who needs them. that they can bond with and can have a friend inside. So that's something I'm very familiar with, because among the other things I've done in my previous life is I was an entrepreneur. And I had my own business. It was called Teacher's Pet Dog Center. And I provided dog obedience training. So I even know how to do it if I had to do it, except I'd bring somebody else in to do it for me, because I can't do everything, obviously. So I've done dog obedience training. I've provided doggy daycare. I've provided overnight boarding. And I know that dogs also save lives. And when you see those bumper stickers that say, "Who rescued who?" right? I know that, and I take that very closely to heart. So that's my heart program, that it won't be the first thing I do, but it will come as soon as I can make it happen.